We're going to start with a panel discussion. And the topic for today's discussion is requirement versus resources, bridging the gap in child sexual abuse, which Rahul will be moderating. Our first panelist is Ms. Ingrid Srinath. She's the Executive Director of Childline India Foundation. She has been the CEO of CRY from 2004 to 2008. She has served on the advisory boards of UNDP, UNDCF, and the World Economic Forum. Ma'am, please come. Our next panelist is Ms. Vidya Reddy. Vidya is the founder of Talir, Center for the Prevention and Healing of Child Sexual Abuse, based in Chennai. Talir is involved with both direct intervention and advocacy activities at various levels across the country and Southeast Asia. Their programs include creation and strengthening of support networks, especially for legal assistance and psychosocial healing of abused children, and also developing information resources. Come, Vidya. Our third panelist is Dr. Nishtha Desai. Dr. Desai is the Director of Children's Rights in Goa. She has authored 2 books on CSA with focus in Goa. She has received the Yashodamini Award for Women in 2006 and the CNN IBN Real Heroes in 2008 in recognition of work done as part of CRG to stop tourism-related pedophilia. Ms. Nishtha Desai, please come. And our final panelist is Ms. Priyanka Bose. Ms. Bose is an actor and survivor of child sexual abuse. She is an award-winning actor and has worked in various films like Johnny Gaddar, Guzarish, and LSD. She's part of the ensemble for the film Gulab Gang, inspired by a real-life story on women's rights. Her recent performance in Yael Faber's Nirbhaya has received much attention. Please come.
So when Suchi and I were discussing what we should be talking about as the opening session, we said, look, there are going to be some very hard papers presented over the next 2 days. So let's take an overview of where we should start. And at the end of the 2 days, let's take an overview of where we should go. So the obvious question was this whole idea of bridging the gap. So Vidya, Nishtha, all of you, would you like us to start off, maybe I should give you guys 2 minutes to talk about your idea of what the gap is and what needs to be done, and then we can open it out? How does that sound? 2 or 3 minutes? Okay, please. Why don't we start from my left?
Thanks, Rahul. I want to talk about 4 gaps. The biggest one is money. Child protection is the only budget in this country that actually got cut last year from the princely sum of 400 crores to 300 crores, and there was no outcry. The ICPS is probably one of the most underfunded government programs that you can imagine. Frontline workers, people who are going out there and rescuing children in dangerous situations, are getting paid 4,000 rupees a month. These people are on call 24/7. The new CSR provision in the Companies Act, for some reason, child protection is not one of the activities that companies can claim as a CSR activity. And private philanthropy, as you mentioned earlier, is so focused on those causes that show an ostensible return on investment, like education, that child sexual abuse just falls by the wayside. The second big gap that we see at Childline is a skills gap, whether it's medical, legal, or psychosocial, whether it's our own staff or police, judiciary, child welfare committees. There's an abysmal lack of knowledge and skills in dealing with this issue. And there's certainly no resources really. Childline itself conducts about 1,000 workshops a year, training police people, judicial officials, etc. But it's really not anywhere near enough. It's particularly not, the skills gap is particularly evident when it comes to what I'm going to call muted groups. This is children with disabilities, domestic child workers, children in institutions who are completely silenced and have absolutely no access. The third big gap is one of scale. Now, Childline is big. We take about 4.25 million calls a year last year. And despite, we have what? If the 52% number is right, that means there are 250 million potential victims. Now, of our 4.2 million calls, only 5,000 were child sexual abuse, which gives you some notion of the gap between the prevalence of the problem and the reporting of it. Fortunately, the numbers are rising. So in the first 3 months of this year, where last year we had 5,000 calls in the entire year, this year we're taking about 100 calls a month. And we know the demand is there. When Amir did Satyamev Jayate in the episode on child sexual abuse, Childline's phone went from 10,000 calls per day to 110,000 calls that day. So we know the demand exists, and if we can bridge that gap of scale in reaching people, then we will make the difference. The other problem, of course, is one of attitudes. And even in the 5,000 calls, when I look at them, the only cases that are getting reported to us, at least, are the ones where there's actual rape or severe abuse. We're not, and even there, the overwhelming number are rape. So until it reaches that point, it's not getting reported. It's only when, and this is particularly true of the middle class, where children will call us reporting abuse either of themselves or friends or family members, and then the family will not want to file a complaint. So of those 5,000 cases, less than half went to charge sheets and FIRs. So those are the four gaps to me: money, skills, scale, and attitudes.
Which we'll get back to. Nishtha?
I'd like to reiterate what you have said about financial resources. In Goa, we have a very beautiful act called the Goa Children's Act. We take a lot of pride in it. The government takes a lot of pride in it. But unfortunately, because of failure to allocate any budgetary resources to it, it has just remained a piece in an exhibition kind of thing. This year, we had filed an RTI asking about the budgetary allocation. They are meant to create a state children's fund for the implementation of the Act. It is 10 years now since the Act has been enacted, and there is no state children's fund created, which means that there is no commitment to implementing this Act. Another area in which I feel there is a gross deficiency is when it comes to the justice system. We have a children's court. It's the first children's court that was set up in India under the Goa Children's Act. Earlier, the judge used to sit 3 times a week, but since the last 2 years, the judge sits only once a week. And what we find is that till December last year, the number of cases in the children's court were 523. Of this, 279 are pending, which means 53% of the cases are pending. Only 55 convictions were there and 120 acquittals. So you can see, how justice is being delivered. And the government keeps assuring that it will appoint a full-time judge, but so far nothing has happened. So we have delayed justice because of the inability, the unwillingness, I would say, to allocate budgetary expenses as well as make budgetary allocations as well as to appoint the necessary personnel. And if we look at other areas also, we find that we do a lot under the name of schemes and things like that. But if we examine what is actually the reality, like if you look at Anganwadis are there all over the country. But at least in Goa, when we've visited the Anganwadis, it's as if they've literally tried to find the worst, dingiest place in which to carry out the Anganwadi. So what service are we giving to the children?
Vidya?
Okay, I'd like to strike a note of dissent so far in this conversation. I think we need to place the responsibility of where we are in working on sexual violence against children entirely with ourselves. Most of us who, not just organizations, most of us who view sexual violence, look at it, when we're working on it, look at it as a child rights issue. We really don't look at it as a larger sexual violence or human rights issue. And I think we have to let the scales fall from our eyes and look at it as within a larger context. And this is something I find entirely irresponsible, I should say, of groups who work with children. That's one. 2 is, I believe that we have to catalyze government. There is no point trying to make government the constant, obvious whipping post. Because we can all do our acts. I mean, as NGOs, we can all do our acts and feel happy that we're doing our little bit. But it doesn't make a difference unless you get government to work with you. And it is possible. They are like elephants. But if you poke and prod them hard enough and long enough, then persevere with it, they move. They move apathetically to start with, but once they pick up with the idea, they move with it. And that's the kind of change we need. And I think that's what we need to converge on. We probably, the thing is, they're so overwhelmed with a lot of things to do that sometimes they have the resources, but they don't have the ideas, they don't have the personnel. And I think we need to help bridge that gap really with them. The other thing that I find is, when you're looking at, I'm sorry for sounding negative, but there's a complete, I don't know whether there are any academics here, and I'm sorry if I'm going to offend you all, but there is a complete disconnect between what's happening in the field and academia where sexual violence is concerned. Complete. I mean, you talk to, the other day I was talking to a principal of School of Social Work on trafficking, and she's talking to me about children begging at traffic lights. And I was just like, startled. So I think there is, usually research should feed into field and field should feed into research, and that is not happening. That's not happening in this country. The other point I really like to make is that we need to start thinking of, go beyond the chest beating, hand wringing, post-abuse. We need to start thinking in a bigger way about prevention. CSA is never going to get eradicated. As long as people are around, we're never going to get eradicated. That's never going to get eradicated. But we certainly can see that far lesser number of kids get abused. And we have to think creatively and innovatively about prevention. Prevention doesn't have instant miraculous results. You don't have you're not there to say how many cases you solved, etc. But it will pay off in the long run. It does pay off in the long run. And I think we really need to look at that aspect in a larger, as I said, more creative, innovative way.
Priyanka?
Hi. Good morning, everybody. I'm just grateful to be here when Rahul called me because I was already digging my way through a certain path that I see myself as an individual. Understanding and acknowledging that I am a survivor of sexual violence as a child has taken me a long time. And that understanding a lot of people don't even have. So when we decided, Poorna Jagannathan and Yael Faber got in touch with a bunch of survivors, and we ended up doing this testimonial theater. I don't know whether you guys have seen it, but I'm sure you've read about it. It's called Nirbhay. And it was inspired by the incident that happened and shook Delhi and worldwide. This was our call to arms, because for me, after that, I was suffering for some time, but I had access, which I want to talk to you about, is I had access through arts and the understanding that I could be used without any discrimination again towards myself, just move forward and go ahead in life with this understanding that, I can just shove it under the carpet and it will be okay. But guess what? I was fooling myself because it wasn't okay, because it made me complicit with the problem. And I couldn't live like that anymore. And I saw things around me and people around me. I discriminated myself thinking that I am different. It only happens to me or someone like me. But who is someone like me? Like, I want to understand, am I any different from anyone else? So what happened was, when we started this process and we started talking about our story, just owning up to your story is a big thing. But when people would ask, tell me, oh my God, you're so fearless or you're brave, I'm like, no, but I haven't been all this while. And the point of no return, where you understand your responsibility towards your community. I am no expert on child sexual abuse. I'm no expert for any advice. I have come here to gain access and more knowledge so I can dedicate myself or my time, where you can demand this time from me, saying that you have a voice, you are already calling a revolution. What are we going to do about it, collective? That's what I want to know over here. And that's why I'm over here, to just get inspired by all of this dialogue which is going to happen. And I hope I'm involved in every single way. And I think in my career, the choices of work as well has taken me into this level where, whether it's my film Gangor, which dealt with tribal police violence towards tribal women in Purulia by Mahashweta Devi. It's a story. And then from there to Gulab Gang, although I did a Bollywood version of it, but still, because of the reach it has, people from different backgrounds, like I'm talking about lower middle class, I'm talking about the majority of India, who get a glimpse of who the real Gulab Gang could be. And I would say that I would want to watch the documentary because that is what reality is, and documentary, yes, is a big part of how these things can reach out. But a lot of the majority, you don't see documentaries. You see, Bollywood is a big part of their upbringing, literally, and. So then how do we team the two now? It's a big question. Is it going to happen? Is that going to change? No. But is the society or the perpetrators, anything like that will change? It'll take a huge amount of the generation changing and working towards it. But what I am interested to know is what is happening in the reform of all these children, especially who we call the foundation. We're going to leave the planet to them, and so what is their world? And people who don't have access through arts or music or anything. So I'm really interested. So I'm really grateful that Rahul got in touch and I'm here. So thank you.
So Priyanka, the reason why, it's your story is evocatively and beautifully told in the play, but I'm going to start swinging back from you. What is the kind of access that was available to you outside of the arts? What kind of support system was lacking or available to you, so we can have an idea what the gap in your life was from what your requirements were to what was available to you?
My right now, I can safely tell you that I was sleepwalking all my life. I had no idea about what the requirements were. But is
No, what I mean is, when you were abused,
yes.
When you looked around, did you get any kind of support from?
No,
Any-
none whatsoever. I chose to keep quiet because I just realized, kids are really smart and sensitive and they're very perceptive. So what was going down in my house, and the fact that my parents did look away and did not confront, and there was no accountability for me. So when there is no accountability, I'm like, okay, I decided as that 8-year-old that when I grow up and I have a voice, I'm going to do it differently. Now, an 8-year-old will have that kind of understanding, but will not understand what is this over-sexualization of this body, which has been taken away from her without her permission. So this understanding came to me much later, like just right now through counseling or through this play. I'm in constant dialogue with this understanding as to so what wasn't there was this support system that actually empowered me in any way, got me confident about my surroundings, or the possibility that empathy does exist. The people who actually abuse me are faceless people. They're not from my family. They are house helps or some part of the society that we have given birth to because we chose to keep quiet.
Okay, Priyanka, thanks. The elephant in the room is, how do we get government to really take this seriously? Not just seriously, but to treat it like, if the numbers are anywhere close to the numbers that we were talking about, how do we actually, this could be the beginning of something where you could build a pressure group, but how else? What are the strategies that, in your opinion, we can use to get them to really understand that this is, malnourishment of children was pretty far back on the radar till about 7 or 8 years ago. And then I became part of a cross-party young MP initiative, where there was Milind Deora, Shahnawaz Hussain, Jay Panda, Prema K, Supriya Sule, and we kept pressuring the Prime Minister till he finally put it in his Independence Day speech. And he said 100 million children going to bed hungry every night is a scandal, and that cannot happen anymore. The numbers are probably higher here. So how do we get government to actually take this, if I can use the word, seriously? Anyone? Please, Nishtha.
Under the Goa Children's Act, there is a system called the Village Child Committee. And now, even under the ICPS, which is for the whole of India, there is the Village Protection Committees. What we have found is that these were not being set up or they were on paper. So we worked with 6 villages to set up these committees. And through these committees, we have found that they can act as protectors of children at the local level. They can play a very powerful role, and they have referred cases, they have taken up cases, they have identified vulnerable children. So they can play a very positive role. So what we have tried to do is showcase the work that these villages are doing, the village child committees, so that this can be replicated in other villages. And we have 190 villages in Goa. 23 village child committees are set up, and out of that, I would say about 10 are functioning well. 6 village child committees we know firsthand are functioning well. So this is one step that could be taken. I think also there is a need for assisting the victims, because we find that there is a large number of acquittals, often because by the time the case comes to court, the children, the witnesses turn hostile. And because of that, the cases do not result in conviction. So there is a need for assistance to the victim. And I think this is something that even under POCSO, it is there, but we need to strengthen this and spell it out as to how it can take place so that it can act as a support thing. The village child committees play a very important role in preventing of child abuse. But once the abuse happens also, children need all the support they can get so that they are able to emerge out of the whole experience with a positive, they're not traumatized for the rest of their lives.
So build a small model that works, show it to government and say, listen, this is a living example of what good it can happen, so why don't you just run with it? Are we relying too much on, and there are many, on the zeal of a particular public servant?
Yeah, I think one thing we have to understand is this country is run on personalities, not just in the political sphere, but also in the administrative sphere. So I would think about it as I'm just looking at Tula's experience of the last 10 years. Find somebody who is at least amenable to listen to what you have to say, and then literally groom them in a very positive way. There's no pun intended, but groom them in a very positive way to understand how they could intervene in CSA. Give them little bits to chew on, because I think first of all we need to understand, when Ingrid was talking about attitude. In India, we are all asexual. We only are sexual when it comes to procreation, it would seem like. And I think unless people first understand that sexuality is part of their identity, is only then when they're going to start looking at sexual violence. So helping people first understand that aspect and then going into sexual violence is very important, because if you start talking straight away, say, 420 million children in India, and then after that 220 million are going to be abused. The figures are daunting, it's overwhelming. You're flooring people with that. The thing is, give them easily chewable bits, little bit at a time, and then help them understand it. And one thing is, it's very easy. It sounds really morbid to say this, but it's really easy to work on sexual violence against children specifically, I say, compared to those of us who work on domestic violence, because you end up smelling like a sewer rat if you don't do something when somebody talks about sexual violence against children. Whereas with domestic violence, you can always say he said, she said, the woman is at fault, etc. With sexual violence against children, if you are not saying you want to do something, you're going to come off looking really badly. So I think government is aware of that. They just need some innovative ideas. They need people to stop constantly pointing fingers at them. They need to be handheld.
Yes, of course, Ingrid, I'm going to swing to you. Are we sure that government doesn't have a kind of a, we don't want to face the enormity of this attitude? No? Okay.
I think there's at least 3 levels at which we can intervene. There's no dearth of models. Between the people in this room, you can probably compile a compendium of best practice that is about, thousands of pages. Why did Mr. Chidambaram feel okay about cutting the child protection budget when he would not have dared to cut any budget which had a strong interest group lobbying against it or for it? Right? There were 3 maybe op-ed pieces written by a few activists, and that was it. He got away with it. He cut the budget because he could. He's a man under fiscal pressure. He's going to look for savings where he can. You've got to raise the price of that violation, if you will. And in order to do that, we have to organize. It means come budget time, all of us in this room and all of our networks need to be pre-lobbying, saying, this is what we need for child protection. You will get it. I mean, look at what's happened to gay rights. Where did that tipping point come? Where did we suddenly go from never talking about the existence of gay people in our country and from criminalizing gay sex to suddenly it becoming a manifesto issue for national parties? I mean, this came from people like us simply banging that drum incessantly till the political, the way I like to phrase it is make the political won't into political will, is one. The second one is there's stuff that doesn't need money. I mean, for example, when Tamil Nadu government agreed to put the child line contact numbers onto textbooks that went out on the state board, that cost them no incremental money. It was a change in design of a textbook cover. They were still printing those textbooks anyway. That's something we can lobby for. This costs the government nothing. Why doesn't every single textbook that goes out from government systems across the country have a chapter, ideally, on child sexual abuse that raises awareness among children and forces teachers to deal with it? Or if not, can we not at least give them access? Can we not say there is a number you can call, there is a website you can go to, that way you can get more information? That costs nothing.
Vidya,
I just want to intervene
please.
there. You know, you made a very important point, Ingrid. There are models, and there are wonderful good practices all over this country. There is no single place, no single spot where you can have access to what is happening across India. And I'll give you a very simple example. This conference, I can assure you about at least 70% of people who would have been interested in coming for it didn't know about it. Now, how do we get people to be aware, just like, that something is happening? Now, for instance, the Delhi High Court, they have set up a whole bunch of child witnesses room to make the whole criminal justice experience more enabling and robust for a child witness. Now, the whole idea is that other high courts also learn from this, but no other high court even seems to know what Delhi High Court's doing. So I would say, I'm jumping the gun here, but one of the 365 actionable goals, or whatever you call the last day of the panel, tomorrow's panel, should be, can we think of some central place where good practices are compiled and at least available for people to figure out what's happening? Then let them contact whoever and find that out.
So something is emerging whereby this one idea of like, let's have a centralized information center of good practices, that's for sure. But also, Ingrid echoes what you started off by saying, which is that we don't get together and put enough pressure. We don't have to wait for Nirbhay. We don't have to wait for 377 to be struck down to start having an outcry. God forbid, let's not wait for that. We have to get together and devise strategically, like the Malnourishment for Children initiative, which was taken up by a band of people, and get, obviously, influential people across the board and start putting that kind of pressure. But it has to have, that's, again, something we should talk about tomorrow evening and also for the next 365 days, because clearly we have failed at that till now. Nishtha?
Rahul, one more point. I'm sorry. But the thing is that I think we NGOs have to blame ourselves as well. It's not just a question of government not being pressurized. It's because we are sitting in our little, comfort areas and not willing to go out and band together or to look at issues in a larger way. I think we have to take responsibility for the lack of pressure groups or whatever.
I just want to add to that, and I got activated literally after I decided that I needed to break my silence, and after being activated, like I didn't know what activism was, and after being activated, I'm like, okay, now what? Where am I going to go? So I'm saying as an individual, where obviously I don't have the expertise like all of the NGOs which are doing so much good for the society. I'm saying as individual, as a community, we have to realize our own importance and responsibility, and we have to carry this forward. And you're right, and not one thing, not second thing, but we have to just keep. Just after Nirbhaya, after winning all that, like in Edinburgh, as an artist, you feel so great about yourself, right? You won the Fringe first, you won the Amnesty, freedom of expression, all of that is great. But then not one day when we came out of the auditorium, we had thousands of people just waiting and crying and asking us, what do we do now? What are we going to do about this? And we had no answers. Is that a break?
I have no clue. What does this mean, Suchi? We have 5 minutes to wrap up, and then we take like discussions and questions for another 10 minutes. Okay, ठीक है. So, if I may, so it's us. Definitely, this is throwing a mirror up to the entire CSA NGO community. Banishta, you had a point to make?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that as NGOs, I know that we all have very difficult tasks, and I don't believe in bashing ourselves up. I do believe that we need to strengthen ourselves by joining hands and, yes, lobbying at crucial points of time. I think we really need to do that. And I also think we need to look at very practical solutions. Like, for example, a person from Rajasthan had come to Goa, and he said that they have a child rights department, and that the personnel who are appointed for services for children, they are not contract appointments, they are regular appointments, which makes a huge difference. Because we find that people are just not taking up jobs in the government home or in other fields, which the government, like counselors for schools, which is so crucial. They're not taking up these jobs because they're all contract appointments.
Which is actually, before we come out, so I just want some opinions on on money we've discussed, resources. Let's just talk about human capital. Do we have enough people energized, educated, and passionate and working in this field? And if not, what can we do to get them on board?
Which is why your films are important. I disagree again with you there. Films, you said, do not really bring social change, but they help start the conversation, and that's what's important. I mean, start the conversation. We're not even talking about it here.
Okay.
I mean, we have this wonderful, if you look at the ICPS on paper, it's a beautiful thing. It envisages counselors, for example, in remote districts that are going to work on salaries of 10,000 rupees a month. These people don't exist, they're unicorns. So we can do, I think, we're a small community, we're a fragmented community, we need to pick our battles and, pick, for example, the budget could be one, but right now,
how do we get people in, Ingrid?
This Companies Act, why is child protection not on that list? You know the impact of that, right? This thing is estimated to be adding about 10,000 crores of spending in CSR budgets, right? Child protection will not qualify for any of that 10,000 crores. Worse still, people who today are funding child protection now have an incentive to stop funding it and go fund something on the list, because funding child protection gets them no credit.
Ingrid, you're back to funding, and I completely agree with you, but let's talk about human capital. How do we get a surge of humanity working on this? What is it that we need to do? How do we bridge that gap?
Well, one of the things that we find is working. We're not going to have trained counselors or people with the requisite medical, legal skills that other NGOs bring to this party on scale, not on the scale India needs. But we do have, for example, we're able to take through film. I'm talking about YouTube. I mean, the CSA film that Childline put out has now had 2.5 million views on YouTube. So the demand is out there. So we need to find innovative ways of getting over the skills gap, of putting things out there that ordinary people, volunteers, teachers, administrators can use in their day-to-day lives while we're waiting to build this cadre of skilled professionals.
Nishta? Okay. Because it just strikes me that if ostensibly we have a massive number of people who have been through this, like you, Priyanka, and so many people we know, surely that's a constituency that is ready to heal and then spread the message and then become workers. I mean, maybe that's where we should be starting off from. But these are just questions that we should be planting in our minds over the next 2 days and for many, many days after. But let's throw this open. This is not just question time. This is sharing time, debate time, disagreement time. Indians hardly ever ask questions. We love to express an opinion. Now's the time to do it. Please go ahead. We have 10 minutes, and then we'll throw some ideas out and then chew on them through the next 2 days as papers are presented. Yes, Madhuri.
I wanted to add to what Nishta was saying about children sexual abuse.
Sorry, could you just introduce yourself so everybody
Oh,
knows who's asking?
I'm Madhavi Karandikar and I work with Bal Asha Trust. And we have dealt with children who have been sexually abused. They have come to us through the police. We help in the investigation and the counseling and talking to the child. One case we handled 20 years ago where the case went on for so long that the child forgot. So ultimately, when the time came for the child to say things in court, she had forgotten and the man went scot-free. So we need fast-track courts.
We need fast-track courts for everything.
We need
No,
fast
but
track courts for
especially
sure.
where children are concerned.
Because, memory... Yes.
Whatever.
In fact,
And
Times
I
of
may
India
be wrong.
Times of India had a very interesting article just yesterday on why fast track courts don't work actually. It will be interesting.
Well, but with children and their memories, and children tend to forget these things. They
You know
want
why
to
they tend
forget.
to forget? Why they tend to forget? Because the human body and the mind is so intelligent.
Darling,
to
the
protect
results are
yourself.
horrendous.
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
But to
we're-
protect yourself, you just like shut everything off. So you forget. It's
Let's-
a convenient thing.
Do we see? Yes, of course. We have two mics in the audience. One can be for this side, one can be for that side. Have we done that or are we behaving with stupendous unintelligence? Oh, good. Wonderful. Yes.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sangeeta Saxena from Bangalore and Fold Trust. We are looking at attitudinal change. We have a very specific small training module on helping parents teach their children personal safety, beginning with what do you say for a 2.5-year-old child, instead of shame, shame, you name the body parts, whichever way you want to name it, you're comfortable with. And, how do you teach them sexuality etiquettes? Instead of saying shame, shame, dirty, cheap boy, go wash your hands. That is one way, and we want to make it available free online. Whoever wants can do it. We are running it for volunteers in Bangalore, and that's one way we thought.
Okay, now this particular round of opinions, question, disagreements, debate is not about what you do. That's going to be for the next 2 days. This is about any ideas, debates, or disagreements on how we can bridge the gap. Yes, someone here? Please. No, there's a lady who has... No, go ahead. If it's about bridging the gap, please, we can hear both voices.
So, a part of it is about human capital. Again, I'm sorry to draw from my experience, but this is a little bit from, my name is Rashi and I work for Sehat. And we work with hospitals in Bombay. And when it comes to, we work for domestic violence as well as sexual violence. And what we've realized is that a lot of time the doctors actually want to help, but don't have the skills or the training. So there is this huge capital of doctors and nurses and healthcare providers who want to contribute but don't know how to. They know that the person who is in their wards, who's come for their ANC checkups, antenatal care checkups, is actually suffering from violence of one kind or the other, but don't know how to help. And by training, by just making services accessible, just by spreading some kind of awareness, we've got this entire hospitals who are ready to refer clients or refer people suffering from violence, both sexual as well as domestic, to a center. We have referrals from the security guards from the hospital to people. So just making services accessible, just making people more aware. And it has taken us 13 years to do that.
Rishi, you had... Sorry, something more?
Yeah, I'm just saying that it takes time, but sometimes it's in the long run. You just have to focus on the long run.
Thank you. Rishi, you had something to say? Yes. Yeah, Mike here.
Hi, my name is Rishi and I'm an independent documentary filmmaker. And this is going to be a question and a disagreement and a debate all put together.
Why don't you tell us what film you've just made?
I've made a documentary film called The Invisibles. It's about adult survivors of child sexual abuse. Right. And so what I wanted to really talk about was, we're talking here about human capital lacking and finances lacking and awareness lacking. But I just want to ask you all and anybody else what we think about first sensitizing people, including people in the government who are going to actually sign off an act or a law or or a budget. Because while making this film, I realized that if I'm not sensitive to an issue, I'm going to be closed off to being aware about it either. I don't want to know anymore if I can't feel anything. So I know I'm coming from a very fuzzy, soft kind of place, but I think if I go to the government and I say, look, this is what happens, can you at least, I don't need your money right now, I just need you to feel a little bad about it.
Do we need to do that? Are we taking it for granted that everybody will feel bad about it? Some reactions?
Can I?
So, yeah, why don't you get, yes, please. Do you
sorry.
have a reaction to that?
I don't have a reaction to that, but I just wanted to share something with you.
Afterwards,
Sure.
definitely, 100%, but let's get reactions to what Rishi is suggesting. Are we just taking it for granted in our arrogance that the government will be bleeding over this, or do we have to do some sensitizing work? Any reactions? Please, ma'am, you have a reaction?
I've been working with police and government of Karnataka.
Yeah, take this mic here.
They're completely horrified at the thought when I was trying to tell them that grandfathers do molest their grandchildren. The principal secretary looked at me and said, "Not in our country, surely." So they really didn't know. And I'm working with the Department of Women and Child and constantly telling them about cases that we're working with every single day. And they feel it. They do. But as Rishi said, that unless they realize it, because believe me, in India, more than 50% of the people who probably have been abused themselves of children are actually clear that it doesn't happen anywhere. It doesn't happen. And it happened to me because I was a one-off case. But even they would say that it hasn't happened to anybody else.
So maybe there's something wrong with the way we're advocating. I mean, I think we need to take a step back and look at that as to how we are putting together our advocacy for the target groups we intend to advocate for, to sensitize.
I'd just like to continue with what you said. Even when we had initially taken up cases of traveling sex offenders, foreign pedophiles to the police, they said, you must be imagining it. But what we did is we've been doing presentations, and what we find, and we got tourists involved, and they signed a signature campaign saying that it distresses them a lot when they're on holiday to see these things happening. And that is something which sort of hit a chord with the state, and since then there has at least been state acknowledgement of the issue.
We're going to end with, ma'am, there was a lady here who wanted to say something. There's lots of time. We'll have 2 days. I think there'll be time, Suchi, after each chat where obviously the person who presents, there'll be issues thrown up. So please feel free to, and we can always also chat outside. So the last comment, question, debate, disagreement for this session.
I wanted to share something. My name is Uma Subramanian, and I wanted to pick up from what Vidyaji said initially about this lack of a resource, a central resource. I represent the ADM Capital Foundation, and we are obviously a funding organization, but I have been on both sides of the table. I am a social worker, and now I work with the foundation. The foundation has launched an initiative, and we've been working for the last 5 years across Southeast Asia through a campaign called Break the Silence. And we entered India last year, and we partnered with Mumbai-based Prerna to start an initiative called Aram. Now, one of the things that we are going to do under Aram this year is to put together an online resource center, which is exactly what the point was in terms of bridging what is available and making it available to all the stakeholders. I think there is money out there. There is money in the international funding arena and nationally. What we really need, and I would urge you all, is to share with us your best practices. Talk to each other, because there is a crisis of collaboration among NGOs. And I think if we can break that, that's the first step to breaking the silence on the issue.
Hopefully after 2 days there won't be a crisis of collaboration. There will be a crisis, there'll be a wonderful virtuous cycle of cooperation. Thank you. This is just the beginning, but I think it's a wonderfully energetic start. Priyanka, thank you. Vidya, thanks. Ingrid, Nishtha. Well, we're all here, so we can sit and chat.